Hey everyone, this is James LaBrie.
And this is John Petrucci of Dream Theater, and you're listening to and watching LINEA ROCK.
Hi James, hi John.
How are you?
Dream Theater, welcome back to LINEA ROCK.
Thank you, we love
Thank
it
you.
here.
And welcome back to Milan,
Yes.
a city that you visit very often, actually,
Yes.
so on tour. You're here presenting the new album, Distance Over Time, 14th album in 33 years. A
33
long
years.
journey,
Wow.
I must say.
That's crazy.
What's the scenery of this leg, of this, magical Dream Theater journey?
Well, first of all, let's talk about this scenery. We like the new yellow.
Great.
It's a really nice job.
Yellow and red.
We heard there was a remodeling, so
Yeah.
very good.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well done.
Actually, the scenery, there was some really good scenery around this new album because the whole band went away to a private spot in upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains by Woodstock. And we were in a beautiful studio that was a converted barn, had big windows so we could look outside and see deer and badgers and trees and all
bears
that stuff.
and-
bears and
yeah.
everything else. So it was a really very peaceful and very cool vibe that we had during the writing and recording. It was great.
Was this the first time that you actually worked like that, nights and days together and, sharing pretty much 24 hours writing and doing it all? Was it the first time for Dream Theater?
Yeah, I mean, the closest we came to that was when we were doing Images and Words.
Okay.
We lived together in a house, but the music was already written. The difference being with Distance Over Time, from the inception of the album, we were there living together, and I think the advantage to that was when we weren't even writing or in the studio, we were still hanging out, engaging in conversation, and hanging out just like we're brothers, we've known each other for so long. So whether we're talking about life, it would ultimately come back to the music.
Okay.
And I think that was great because it was always furthering the experience and ultimately the music, right?
Were you doing all by yourselves? I mean, if there was somebody of you cooking for the others,
Yeah.
for example.
Right. Well, we were cooking for each other.
Okay.
So we did make breakfast a few times. We had barbecue. James cooked. I cooked. Mike Mangini cooked. But we did have our engineer there, and we had my guitar tech, Maddie, who does like everything for us. So when we didn't want to cook, which was most of the time.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Maddie would be the one to make sure to go grocery shopping and make sure to go
All right.
and get us food. And there was actually really good food up in Monticello, New York,
Okay.
where we were.
Yeah.
And we were eating Greek food and Italian food and barbecue.
But we started
Everything was
out
good.
thinking that, we'll take turns every day, we'll cook.
Yeah.
And no,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
We got too
You know?
busy with the
Yeah,
music.
you had stuff to do.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But why Monticello? Actually, it sounds like an Italian
It
kind
is.
of place.
Yeah,
so I bet
it
the
is.
food was good.
It was really good.
Why that place? Why New York? Is there was any special reason? And actually, why close to Woodstock, which is a very
Yeah.
meaningful place?
Sure. I mean, it all kind of worked out. That kind of area of the East Coast. It could have been anywhere. Pennsylvania, New York, even New England. There's a lot of beautiful areas at that time of year where you get kind of nature and mountains and lakes and stuff. But it just happened to be Monticello because there was this property with the perfect structure. There was this barn that was built to be a film and recording studio.
Okay.
But the previous owner, sold it and took all the equipment out. So it was just this empty, beautiful, beautiful space with a little house on the property.
On the prairie.
Yeah, a little house on the prairie.
Yeah.
And so it just happened to be the perfect place for us to live and then write the record in. And ultimately, we ended up recording it there as well. which we didn't
So
plan
it wasn't
on.
planned.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we were just gonna like write and then move out of there and go into like, maybe a Manhattan studio.
All right.
But it was so nice.
Yeah.
And we were like, why are we leaving? It basically
sounded amazing.
It sounded
The room.
amazing. It's already a studio.
Yeah.
But there was no equipment. So we told Maddie and Jimmy T, our engineer, turn it into a recording studio. And they brought everything in. God bless them. They did an amazing job, and we turned it into a recording studio.
What about the instruments? I mean, did you have everything set up already? I mean,
Yeah.
did you compose as a band?
Yeah.
Okay, so this time was really a total, absolute, experience
Yeah,
for Dream Theater.
If you can see some pictures, the place was packed, filled with guitars and drums and basses and keyboard everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we set up all of our live equipment, and we just played loud and live and wrote the record that way. That's why the record has so much energy,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of fun to it, and a lot of spirit.
Which was the longest track to finish, from the beginning to the end? The toughest one.
It's so funny when you tell people, well, what is it, 3 days?
Yeah,
would
right.
be beginning to end?
Yeah.
I don't know, what was
I
that?
don't know which
was
was-
that Pale Blue Dot?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's a funny thing because the writing pace that we have, and it's always been this way. It's pretty quick. Once all the guys are together and we're kind of locked into an idea,
Yeah.
and everybody starts to think and trade ideas, it happens really quickly. Like we can start an idea at the beginning of the day, and by the end of the night, either be done or almost done, and it'll spill into the next day maybe. Like James said, maybe 3 days at the most. I'm trying to think which song took the longest. I can't. Maybe Pale Blue Dot, but
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
At Wits End? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, we wrote. We
know.
wrote all the music in about 18 days.
Do you ever fight over ideas?
Oh, we
or-
get
We beat
scraps
each other up.
Okay.
every day.
Or it was like, yes,
Yeah.
James, you're right. This was I was thinking about.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay.
Well, there's
No.
a funny.
No.
No, there's no contentious
Yeah.
situation that's going on. None whatsoever. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And what about the lyrics? I mean, there was a toughest lyric to write for you, or did they come, fluently and smoothly?
Well, I guess we're all different when we approach lyrics. If I'm speaking on my behalf, when I write a lyric, I like it. Usually, it's only maybe happened once or twice. No, okay, 3 times maybe, where I've written a lyric in a day. But generally speaking, it's 2 to 3 weeks, because I write 1,000 words out, and then I start seeing lines that, make sense to me, and then I fine tune it.
But is it getting harder over the years?
No.
or
It's always been that process with me.
Okay.
It's always been like that. So it's really nothing new. I come to expect that little moments of frustration. I'm like, why can't I get past this line? I know what I want to say, or why can't I say what I'm thinking? It's very strange at times writing lyrics. But that's my experience with lyrics. Yours is.
Actually, this one I had a really easy time. I hate to say that, but the hardest thing sometimes.
I hate for you to say that.
The hardest thing sometimes is trying to think of a topic. But for me, once I kind of latch on to a topic, what this song
Yep.
is going to be about, it's usually pretty smooth. But this one, sometimes when you have all this music written, and then you think about, okay, we need lyrics for everything.
So for you, it's always the music first.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
always the
okay.
music first. But sometimes it becomes a little overwhelming. Like, oh my God, we got to come up with all these lyrics. But this time it was really fast. I don't know, something. It might have been the setting, maybe the peacefulness of the environment.
The environment,
Yeah, it just
So
went
very
really.
inspired.
It went very quickly for me, so I was very happy.
Like I know, it's funny you say that, but
Yeah.
it's always been the music first. And with me, even though I've written out words, and I'm going, this would be a great idea to do lyrically, I've had things that I'm absolutely sure this is going to be my next lyric. And then when I hear the song and the melody, because I always feed off of the vocal melody to construct the lyrics, I can't tell you how many times I've just Forget that subject.
Yeah.
I'm not even going anywhere near it
Okay.
because it's the way that the music first and foremost moves me. It almost dictates what I want to write about, and then the melody itself is almost a must for me before I even write the actual words. Yeah.
And John, you also produce the record.
Yeah.
Do you leave a sort of dualism, or I must say trialism, maybe, between, composition, recording, and producing?
Yeah.
And in which role you are the most demanding with yourself and with the band?
It's a great
Every
way.
role,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's a really good way to put it. In fact, when the record was being mixed by Ben Grosse, sometimes we'd have discussions about certain parts of the sound of the record, and he would say to me, "Well, are you wearing your producer hat right now, or your guitar player hat?" Because he would say your producer hat would definitely leave it alone right now. So for me, I mean, I kind of like the producer role is there's a lot of details involved with that, kind of, working out how we're going to do the record, where we're going to do it, who we're going to hire, logistics like that.
Yeah.
And then following through to, this is the kind of record we talked about doing. Now, I feel like my biggest job is to make sure we stay on track
Okay.
to do that. So by the time we're done, we can all look at each other and say, we accomplished what we set out to do. So that's my biggest role. And I guess I'm most demanding with that. But when I'm in guitar player mode, then I'm really demanding with that because I want it to all be as good as it could be.
Okay.
So I kind of like to sort of switch. But as a producer, I think my biggest thing is to sort of be able to step back and be able to see it as a big picture and make sure that we're just kind of staying on track.
You are still mainly defined as progressive metal. Do you think that it still fits Dream Theater, or it's some way too limiting at this point?
No, I think it's always fit Dream Theater from the very beginning, and especially in this album. I mean, progressive metal, I think it speaks for itself. But there's always, those have always been the predominant elements in Dream Theater musically, is that we are a progressive band. We have those progressive, I guess, direction that we go musically and that influence in each and every one of us. But there's also where we've been hugely influenced and we've always wanted to be a part of metal. So it's natural for us to be a progressive metal band in many ways.
What is most metal in your attitude? Is just the sound, or there's more? I mean, it goes too deep. And also, prog is considered, in a sense, the evolution of classical music. Do you agree on that? What do you think?
I think it all stems from classical music, right?
Yeah, right.
If you think about it,
Yeah.
And then the blues, even blues came from,
Right.
if you read back on some of the earlier blues artists, there was at some point that they were listening to classical music and jazz and stuff like that. And then blues morphed into rock, like look at Led Zeppelin, one of the greatest bands ever, who were rock metal, as far as I'm concerned, but a lot of their roots are blues,
Yeah.
You can...
The most metal is James's tattoo.
Okay.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that, the thing that to me defines like the metal part of it is in the sound. It's like the sound and the attitude, because the progressive part, and everybody maybe looks at this differently. I know in Italy there's a big history of progressive bands, and the culture embracing that for sure. For me growing up, I kind of associated it with a lot of the UK, prog, right? So Yes and Genesis and all that. But all those bands sort of had, especially in the guitar side, like a softer sort of sound. And so the whole metal thing comes from like the heaviness, whether it's drop tunings or whether it's just the type of guitar sound and the aggression. Same with the drums. And so the way that you treat, to me, the guitar sound, the drum sound, and bring that attitude into the songwriting style, that's the metal part of it.
Right.
I think it's really important. It kind of, this is like easy for me to say as a guitar player, but if you look at rock music, the guitar sound in the music kind of determines the style of the band.
It's true.
Right?
It
Right,
is.
so if it's like a softer kind of sound, it sounds like more
Also,
like,
the dynamics of the drums.
of the drums.
But
You're 100% right. I agree. So those two instruments really, they
But
kind
they're
of
feeding off of one
yeah,
another.
Yeah.
and they
You know?
kind of shape the sound of the band.
Yeah.
Right, and you can take it in certain directions. So if you're going with a heavy, Metallica kind of guitar sound, and that sort of drum sound you're describing, it's going to have a metal edge to the sound. Whereas if you go more like UK prog or whatever, and it's kind of like more of a Steve Howe, guitar sound, and more of a jazz sort of inspired drum sound, it's going to go in that direction. So, to me, that's a good way of looking at it.
this is your first record on InsideOutMusic, Sony Music. What at this point of your career, determines, the changing of a label? Is it different maybe than 20 years ago? Your choices are actually determined by different, things or a different, approach?
I think that it's a huge part of your career is who you have representing you and the people that understand you and the people that are working with you to promote who and what you are musically. You have to have the right team at your side. We were fortunate for many years. We were with Warner, and our going into someone like Sony Inside Out. Well, a lot of it, the catalyst for that was Thomas Weber, who's been, first and foremost, he was a fan of the band back in the Images and Words days. Okay. So it was almost like he was always on, the fringe, and we could always, be interacting with him and speaking about music. And it was almost like it's not if it's going to happen, it's when is this going to make sense to be with someone like this? And over the years, the conversations became a little bit more directed towards, seriously, let's consider this. And this is what I hear from the band. And this is how I see the band. And this is what I'd like to do with the band,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was a very big reason why we went with Inside Out and Sony was because they showed us what we want. They said to us what we wanted to hear, and not to be misinterpreted with lip service.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of that out there, right? Promising you something that you kind of feel as if it's too good to be true. But I think you also have to look at the source. Where's it coming from, and what is their history, and what have they done in the industry? And that kind of gives you a good indication. Is this who I want to be associated with? Because they've proven themselves.
But did the deal actually finish, or you just wanted to change at this point? What happened? I mean, it was your decision, or it actually simply ended?
Well, when we first, when we were a young band, apart from the very first record we did, from Images and Words on, we very, very stupidly and naively signed a really long record contract.
Okay.
It's like 7 albums.
It was
wasn't it
8
initially?
albums.
It was 8?
8 albums.
Oh my God.
So we were basically in the same contract continuously for 8 albums.
Okay.
And a lot of times with record labels, they'll do long deals with young bands, but they won't pick up the next option. They'll drop the band. They never dropped us. So even though
it's like, let us go.
Yeah. And so originally we got signed. It was called Atco Records.
Yeah.
And then eventually it was like East West Records, and then it was
And
like
Elektra.
East West America, then Elektra, and we stayed the whole time.
We just kept going. And
So
going.
when that deal actually ended,
It was time to change.
it was time. So then we signed with Roadrunner Records, and we did several albums with Roadrunner. We actually re-signed a second time, but we were smarter this time, where we signed shorter deals. So that means that at the end of a 3-album cycle or 2 albums, then the contract is up for renewal or looking towards something else. So in this case, the Roadrunner deal was up, and we started looking at all the options out there. And as James said, Thomas had been wanting to sign the band for a really long time, and the time really felt right. Good. And he's been fantastic. It's been, the label has been amazing. Yep. This is all new experiences with the people at Sony and Inside Out, and they've been great. So
Good.
yeah.
Back to the sound of the record. It's very interesting the choice of Ben, for the mix, which has, a very strong, heavy fame.
Yeah.
But you chose for the mastering Tom Baker, which is famous for, working with the Stones, Bowie, Santana. So it seems, two different worlds.
Right.
So how did you make this choice and why?
Well, I mean, as far as picking Ben, I mean, I'm a big fan of his. So if you take a look at his discography, it's unbelievable, and he's done. It's such a wide range of work, but I love the way that he gets a really powerful and big sound, and based on the kind of record we were doing, that was kind of towards the heavier edge, that had a lot of power to it. I wanted to make sure that it was mixed that way. I mean, there was a fine line and Ben really understood this, because we didn't want the album to sound like over hyped. We wanted to keep the organic nature of the barn, and Ben kept that, but we also wanted it to like really speak and be powerful. So that's why we chose Ben, and I couldn't be happier. He is unbelievable at what he does. And he had suggested Tom, and we never worked with Tom before.
No.
And he did a fantastic job as well. So, all new things on this record. New record label, new way of making it, new mix engineer, new recording engineer, actually, and a new mastering engineer. So besides the band members, everything
else is
changed.
new except us.
But it's kind of fun. It's fun to do that, because you get new perspectives on your music.
Yeah.
And I think, in this case, it turned out really well.
Great.
So happy with it.
About the cover artwork, which is great, I must say, and seems to fit the record.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I did.
It's somewhere around here.
Yes, I did, of course. It was created by your longtime collaborator, Hugh Syme. Syme.
Yes.
Okay. You work with Rush, Iron Maiden, Stone Sour, and with you, of course. It brings some Shakespeare reference, to be or not to be. How did he came to it? And did you have different designs to choose from, or it was, it was it, and you worked just on this one? And also, what about the New York Times similar cover incident?
My God.
What happened?
You want to talk about that part?
Yeah, I'll talk about that part. You sure you want me to talk about that part?
That was
I mean,
bizarre.
hey, we were all
Bizarre.
flabbergasted. We were shocked.
Yeah.
And, you actually John sent it out to the band members. And of course, we're all like, what? What is going on? Is this for real? So, you can't help but think, because we had released what the album cover would be 2 weeks before that was the cover for the New York Times. So we're like, is this a coincidence?
They wanted to make a service to you. I mean,
Right.
to
They wanted to
do
do us a
some
favor.
promotion.
Flattery, right? Yeah.
If
No, but it's anyone's guess at this point. Was it somebody who was a fan that worked in the New York Times? I mean, that's my theory. Okay. They saw it. Hey, this is really cool. I'll just suggest it. But who really knows? But is it coincidental, or I got a hard time believing it. That's me personally.
That freaked us out.
Yeah.
Because
you can resell it as, we were on the cover of the New York
Times. There you go.
They just need to put Dream Theater in there.
This was part of the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing, I mean, first of all, Hugh Syme is awesome. And we love working with him. He's so creative, and he's done so many records for us, so many covers.
Yeah.
But originally, the idea for Distance Over Time, because of where the title came from, originally came from this formula we had for velocity, which is V equals D over T.
Okay.
And so we always had in mind using like D over T, because it's kind of a clever, it has the two initials of Dream Theater and means distance over time.
Yeah.
So originally Hugh actually started working on a concept which just featured D over T. It was very minimal, very minimalistic. And he'd done several different versions of it, and we had seen a bunch of these things, and kind of guys were like, I don't know about this, record label was like, maybe, I'm not sure. And Hugh kept saying, he's like, I have something else that I'm just waiting. He's like, I'm just going to wait. But I have this other idea. He's like, I'm going to wait to show it to you. And we were working on this D over T, and I actually loved it. And some of it ends up being in the packaging, which you'll see when you get it. So you'll see some of that original D over T stuff. So it didn't go to waste. But when it was kind of being received with a little bit of trepidation, he was like, all right, I'm going to show you this other idea. And he showed this Hamlet. And I was like, that's awesome. And showed it to all the guys and the label, and everybody was like, thumbs up. Great.
That's it.
That's it. So Hugh he's like super creative and super clever. But the New York Times thing, for anybody that doesn't know, here in Italy, like James said, 2 weeks later, the cover of their weekly magazine or biweekly, whatever, was the same thing. It's just like in reverse.
Exactly.
And so we were like, what the hell is going on? And there was a tweet that went out where fans were kind of talking about it, and I think the art director for the Times chimed in and said, "Oh, sometimes that happens. There's similarities." So I don't know. It's just bizarre.
Maybe someday you'll know.
Maybe we will.
Maybe you won't.
It could be some like bizarre cosmic coincidence. Who knows?
The art director from the Times will get fired, and then he'll reveal the truth. No, who knows?
About the tour, which starts from the US in March, the news said that you're going to perform some of the new records, some older songs, and Scenes from a Memory, Metropolis Part 2, in its entirety. So it's going to be a lot of fun, of course, but a very, very long show, I suppose. Why that album in particular you chose, to play in its entirety, and actually how long will be the show?
Well, it's the 20th anniversary, 2019, 4 Scenes from a Memory. So it kind of, we want to give it a nod, and the best way to do that, to pay homage to it, is to play it. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason, it was a fan favorite, it was a huge album for us. And I think we were pretty sure, let's take advantage of the moment. The fact that it is the 20th anniversary, we know that fans around the world completely embrace that album. So it just makes sense. As far as doing the other songs from previous albums and then a few songs from this album, or however many it might be, that's where the difficulty lies, and it gets harder and harder as time goes on for this band to decide on a set, or it might have to be several sets. I don't know.
We have to mix it up. I mean, it's hard to with venue doors, times and curfews. It's hard to do a show longer than 3 hours anyway. So, with an intermission, 2 sets.
Not to mention we're human beings.
Yeah. I mean, it might be in the 2.5 hour zone, somewhere like that,
Yeah.
Do you know when Italy will be planned already, but you cannot tell? I mean, when we will actually release this interview, maybe the date will be already announced.
They will.
Maybe.
I mean, we're working on it. Like right now, the plan, as James said, we have, or maybe you said it. I'm tired. We have the U.S., North America, U.S., Canada, right. And so that's all indoor shows. Over the summer, we're going to be doing a lot of festival shows over here in Europe, and kind of intersperse are some indoor shows. But it might not be until later on in the year where we bring the full proper show that we're talking about now, the indoor version, to Italy. Okay. So it will definitely come here, because a Dream Theater tour would not be a tour without coming to Italy. So, but it might be later in the year. We're just not sure.
And for the festival, you'll have a shorter set?
Yeah. Okay. So some of those festivals we headline. Some of them we don't. We're doing Download Festival in the UK. So some of them are shorter, where we play an hour, and some of them we have more time, an hour and a half, 2 hours. So.
Very last question. So in 2018, one of the most shared April Fool's tricks, on the 1st of April in Italy was Dream Theater touring with a double drum kit with both mics, Mike and Mike, banging together on the same stage with the band for James' joy. The fact that you, John, and Mike Portnoy actually remained very, very good friends, generated, some kind of hope in the fans. Do you think that something like that, having 2 drum kits on stage is something that could ever happen?
Oh my God, that would be insane. Was part of the April Fool's that I shaved my beard as well?
Yes.
Was it?
Right.
Yes. You were very
God.
shared on the
Right,
April
exactly.
1st. Yeah.
Can I see that? Yeah.
That's so funny. So that was an actual April Fool's?
Yeah,
here in
it
Italy?
was true. Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
That's so
and it
funny.
was very much shared, and people
Yeah.
started to believe,
Oh
it was
my God.
true. But because, it was such a huge news that you don't care, that it's April 1st, so
Yeah.
you don't realize that. So it was,
Right.
it was insane. A lot of people, hey, they're coming back together
Right.
with 2 drummers.
With 2 drummers. And then part of it was the new album is Metropolis Part 3.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, maybe that was okay.
Jeez.
So that's something that will never happen. It remains an April Fool.
Well, we'd have to have 2 guitar players, 2 singers, 2 keyboard players, 2 bass players.
you never
There's
know.
got to be 2 of everything.
You
Exactly.
never know. 2
Yeah.
drummers. Okay. Thanks, guys, for your time.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
see you soon when you come back to Italy.
Awesome.
And it would be a pleasure to have you back here.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All
It was
right.
great.